Peace
Yeah.
is when nothing on the inside is bothering you. So what happens a lot of times is we put on a good face. Hey, I'm doing great. How are you doing? But inside, there's this underlying tension going on in our life. There's this heaviness, like I'm carrying around a heavyweight backpack all the time. Or maybe there's darkness in my life. There's irritability. There's some tension. And when it's inside, it just never turns off. That is a lack of peace. Peace is when there's nothing on the inside that's driving you, that everything is totally steady and calm inside, regardless of what's happening in the outside realm.
Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to the original Loretta Brown Show, radio to open the heart, heal the soul, and awaken the consciousness. Spiritually, it's a time of awakening our identity and asking, who am I now? And what am I here to create? And on that, wow, what an incredible day for Batty Carmichael, my guest, to be on the show. He is a peace and alignment expert whose work focuses on helping people reduce internal pressure by identifying and releasing unseen friction that disrupts mental, emotional, and physical well being. With over a decade of experience, more than 1,000 documented breakthroughs involving anxiety, my anxiety, emotional distress, and chronic pain, Batty has discovered a powerful pattern. Many people are not failing at self improvement, they're simply trying to solve the wrong problem. Batty, I'm so glad to have you on the show today. It's very timely.
Well, thank you, Loretta. I'm very excited about being here.
Yeah. So you come in the middle of fire in the sky,
Yep.
holding a banner of peace.
That's,
Right.
that is such an appropriate timing for everything, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. Um, I have to ask you, when you look at the world around us, what brings you peace? How are you? Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons to have a lack of peace as you look around this world. I think the world as a whole is getting less and less peaceful. It just feels that way, darker, more violent. But what's interesting is peace is not based on what's happening around you. Peace is on the inside, and when you understand how to gain peace in your life, then it doesn't matter what's coming against you from the outside or what you see in the world around you. Probably the best way to describe it, I remember years back we were traveling with our kids. We were in the minivan and we went through a horrible
Minivan.
rainstorm. This was up in Montana. And if you've ever been there, they can have horrendous rain. And it was pounding so hard on the windshield, you thought it would break through the windshield. But inside, we were completely dry. So if you look at peace as being dry and lack of peace as being drenched, then even though we were going through the midst of being drenched inside the van, we were completely dry. And that's the way peace actually operates individually. Does that make sense?
I love that analogy because that makes it really easy to begin to grasp this idea. What is your definition of peace?
Great
People,
question. Peace
yeah.
is when nothing on the inside is bothering you. So what happens a lot of times is we put on a good face. Hey, I'm doing great. How are you doing? But inside, there's this underlying tension going on in our life. There's this heaviness, like I'm carrying around a heavyweight backpack all the time. Or maybe there's darkness in my life. There's irritability. There's some tension. And when it's inside, it just never turns off. That is a lack of peace. Peace is when there's nothing on the inside that's driving you, that everything is totally steady and calm inside, regardless of what's happening in the outside realm.
Well, and of course, everybody listening is going, well, that sounds lovely, Batty. How do I do that?
Yeah,
What?
exactly.
Right? Because people are like, I feel peaceful for about 1 second, Loretta, and then I'm like, and then the cat, and then the kids, and then my job,
Yeah.
right?
So this is the difference between peace and calm. So watch this. Calm
Ah,
is something I can force from the outside. My life is really hectic. I feel there's a lack of peace, so I shut the doors, turn off the email, turn off the phone, put on some relaxing, soothing music, and now I'm just going to calm down. But the problem with that is it's only temporary because as soon as I open the door, turn on the phone, no pun intended, all hell breaks loose again. All right? Peace is totally different. Peace is where the calm is on the inside and nothing on the outside rocks you. The way that you get there is you have to understand how we're wired, okay? So we are a spiritual being in a physical world. And if you think about a three-legged stool, and this three-legged stool represents us as a person, you have the three legs of mental, physical, and spiritual. Not the religious spiritual, but a spiritual that's just a different dimension of our life. It's neither mental or physical. And as long as all three legs on that stool are strong, the stool is steady. You can jump up and down on it. You can carry a heavy backpack or lift a big load, and the stool is steady. That's our inner life. As long as all legs are steady, our inner life is unshakable. But once we start to get one of those legs out of whack, and the leg I like to focus on is the spiritual leg because most people don't understand it. When that spiritual leg gets out of whack because it gets out of alignment, what happens is if you imagine that third leg in the stool getting out of alignment, it now puts stress on the other two legs. And that stress starts to manifest irritability, anxiety, depression, chronic pain, migraines, asthma, allergies. A lot of these things will have a root in that third leg, that spiritual leg. And there's just this ongoing constant tension, and it never stops. And it doesn't stop until you learn how to get that third leg back in alignment. And what I'm seeing, Loretta, is when you get that third leg back in alignment, these things that the medical community says you're going to have it the rest of your life, I'm seeing those things disappear at almost a 90% success rate.
Wow. So you're talking like physical disease, dis-ease,
Yeah, so let me give you
illnesses?
just
Yeah.
some
Yeah,
examples,
give us
okay?
yeah.
Like anxiety. If
Okay.
I had an acquaintance come up to me, this was now about 3 months ago, and he said, Batty, I'm just being eaten up with anxiety. Can you help me with that? I said, well, what's going on? He said, I don't know. It came on about a year and a half ago. I went to the doctor, probably 6 or 8 months ago, and he said, you got anxiety. You're going to have it the rest of your life, so let's get you on meds, right? I said, well, anxiety is
Yeah.
easy to get rid
Yeah.
of once you understand that third leg. And so I led him through what I call the outrageous peace process. We were talking about this earlier before we started the show. It's chapter 8 in the Outrageous Peace book. And I started to lead him through that process, teaching him how to give his conscience, his inner self, permission to look for where the source of that problem was. And what came up was his wife had a breast exam. They found lumps. He became terribly afraid. I said, well, that's the key. You became afraid, which is out of alignment on the spiritual side, and you never let go of it. So I guided him in the process of simply how to release that fear. By the end of the day, his anxiety was completely gone. So
Wow.
I'm seeing things like that. I teach at an addiction recovery center, and taking the same concept but at a deeper level, I'm seeing these ladies who've been caught up in addictions for 15, 20, 30 years. They've been in and out of jail, in and out of addiction recovery centers. And I'm seeing at an 87% success rate, because I measured it there, I'm seeing them getting rid of their addictions for drugs, sex, alcohol, pornography, their anxiety,
Wow.
depression, bipolar disorder, PTSD, borderline personality disorder start to disappear. Chronic pain like arthritis, fibromyalgia, allergies, migraines go, sicknesses. I'm not saying that all of these have a spiritual root, but what I'm seeing, Loretta, is the vast majority of the things that we deal with that takes this peace and quality of life out of our life can simply be restored once we understand how to be put back in alignment in that third leg.
Um, I love what you're saying because I think it's the absolute core of the
Yes.
whole thing, right? Um, in the work that I do, we do bring the spiritual in because And I'm going to ask you this as a question, as this kind of a statement question. I kind of feel like people have lost their way a little bit, or they've lost the depth of life. Like we're so busy, everybody's like run, 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 go, 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 screen, screen, screen,
Yeah.
right? Social media, whatever it is. And I want you to talk a little bit more about that spiritual leg and the importance of that, and what all does that entail?
Yeah. So let me give some background. So you mentioned I
Okay.
come from 7 generations of medical doctors. What's also interesting is I married into a medical family as well. And my father-in-law, he's now been deceased for 24 years. Okay. He practiced internal medicine for 50 years. So this was during pre-pharmaceutical mandates, right? So
Right.
they were scientists at that time, and he had a tremendously high success rate in helping his patients get free of issues. And what would happen is they would say, "Doctor, I've got this problem." And he would sit them down at his desk and say, "Well, health is based on 3 things: mental, physical, and spiritual." So he would start to interview them and identify which of those 3 legs it likely was. Okay? That's how important this is, because most of the times it was something spiritual. So let's talk about spiritual. I believe that there is some sort of a creator being out there. Some people call him God, higher power, pure love. Doesn't matter the name. But that there's this other higher power being, this God that created us. And he loves us and he wants the best for us. And he places inside of us a self-guiding compass. We call it the conscience. And it tells us when we do something good and when we do something bad. And we don't have to be trained on it. This is why we know there is in the spiritual side. In fact, that spiritual leg primarily is that compass, that conscience of ours. So what it's designed to do is, if we do something wrong, it makes us feel guilty, like, I know I shouldn't do that, right? I know I should
Right.
let it go. And if we don't let it go, then it gets out of alignment. And it seems like such a little thing, like someone hurts us, and usually a close friend or relative, and now I hold bitterness in my heart. I hold unforgiveness. And I say, it's no big deal. I don't need to forgive them. It's past, gone, but I always hold this bitterness. And I know for your radio listeners can't see this, your video can, but I'm holding up a glass of water. It's only probably about a pound. And I can easily hold it, but watch this. It's something little. If I have to hold this glass for an hour, my arm starts to hurt. If I have to hold it up for 24 hours, it's impossible. In other words, even though something is little, over and magnified through time, it creates a lot of stress and strain. And what we do is we hold a bitterness against someone because they did something against us. Someone else made us angry, and we never let the anger go. The ancient scriptures say, "Do not let the sun set on your anger,"
Yeah.
right? Because what happens is when we hold on to these things, they start to take root in that conscience, getting it out of alignment. And once it's out of alignment, it creates peace starts to thin in our life and create chaos in our life. And that's the spiritual part of us. It's how we respond to people and circumstances. That's neither mental or physical, it's spiritual. And when we learn to release what we're holding on to in that spiritual side, then what happens is these things that have been going on in our life, that's been this undercurrent of our life and friction, starts to disappear. Like here in my neighborhood, there's a lady. It's really funny. It's sad funny, right? When she walks, when she's just this
Yeah.
all uptight. It's like she's got this rod up her back, and she's just frustrated. When she drives, she's the proverbial bat out of hell driver, through the neighborhood. And on the back of her car, she has this bumper sticker that says, "I run to get the crazies out."
Oh,
In other words, she knows there's something going on in her life that's making her crazy all the time. But she tries to control it with outside effort of exertion and discipline, and it'll never leave, because what's actually going on is an inside misalignment. And understanding, I've been doing this now for 10 years. So what I know to be true, because this is how these patterns work, at some point, somebody made her really upset. And she's never let it go. And what's happened is it's like a wound that festers. It starts to fester and poison the whole body. And until you clean the wound, the body's not going to heal.
Yeah.
Is that making
That's
sense?
that's so spot on because by the way, I was thinking about my cat doing the zoomies. But anyway, she's trying to get rid of the crazies. It's actually true because when you hold that on the inside, I look at it from an energetic point of view, but it's really the same thing. It's like you're holding that inside and it doesn't it wants out.
Yes.
My take on it is it actually wants out. And when it activates, when it triggers, because God and all that loves us so much will bring into our life exactly what we need to be triggered, right, to get that to the surface. And then, many times people will just say, no, 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 I don't want to deal with that. And they stuff it back into the back of the closet.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't go away.
So let me lean in on that a little
Yeah.
bit more because I
Yeah.
think this will be helpful for your listeners. When I speak about misalignment, if you're familiar with energy entities, I'm talking about a low energy,
Yeah.
dark energy, low vibration. And when we do something good, then our conscience says, you did great. And when we start to do good, that's the high energy and light, right? So what actually is happening, this is my framework. I've been able to, now the way frameworks are, like if you think of Einstein's theory of relativity, I'm
Hmm.
not a scientist. All I know is the name, right? I don't really understand much about it. But because of that, even though it's never been proven, it's allowed us to split the atom, to create jet engines, to put satellites in orbit, and put a man on the moon. And it's a framework that scientists can operate within and say, I think this works, so let's test it. The framework that I've been able to kind of piece together, and this is what I sense is happening, is when we get out of alignment in that spiritual leg. Let's talk about anger, for example. Someone upsets me and I get really upset, and now my life is just always, there's this underlying tension of anger and irritability, and I blow up in anger really quick at the least little thing. I'm hurting my relationships, my spouse, my children, because I keep blowing up and I don't want to. What's actually happened in this framework is it seems to be that when I blow up in anger that first time and my spiritual leg gets out of alignment, it opens up a doorway in the spiritual part of me, that extra dimension, that some sort of an amplifying entity, a dark energy entity or low energy, of amplifier, anger amplification. And what it does is it roots into my life and it starts to simply amplify that negative thing that I did, and it won't turn off. And then when I get upset at someone else, it amplifies being upset. When I get fearful, another entity comes in and now it amplifies fear. And so now these things start to manifest as irritability, frustration, depression, anxiety. It can manifest into things like pain and allergies. But what it is something, that dark energy, that low energy, that's in my spiritual dimension of me, that's just constantly there. And I have to learn how to release it and let it go. Once it goes, then whatever it was amplifying now disappears in my life.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes, yes. We're actually going to take a little station break, but wow, I love this conversation so much. My guest today, Batty Carmichael, outrageous peace, outrageous peace. I want you to notice it's not a great big huge book. It's really important. I'm just going to tell you right now, it's really important. And don't go away because we're going to get deeper into it when we come back. This is Loretta Brown. We'll be right back. So anyway, we're having a wonderful talk about peace and the spiritual leg. And Where did we leave off, Batty? Where do we want to pick it up?
Yeah, so we were talking
Yeah.
about
Okay.
that this out of alignment is an entity, it seems like, in the spiritual dimension of our life that
Yeah.
amplifies. And how we were just getting into how do you start to maybe identify and release those things.
Yes. Yes.
Unfortunately, we won't be able to get a full understanding of that, but I'll give you this cursory overview of it because once you learn the pattern, right, then the pattern allows you to get set free. In
Okay.
the ancient Bible text, there's a passage that says, the truth will set you free. So once you learn the truth of how this third leg operates in our life, then you can start to live your life in a way that it's totally free. Like I remember one of my friends was going through a really nasty divorce. And on this particular night, his marriage had been in shambles for years, lots of tension. And both of them had been doing bad things for the marriage.
Yeah.
And that day, he had just been served with papers for divorce. And he was just torn up. They'd been working for 6 months to try to reconcile everything. And then out of the blue, he served. So he was over at my house, and I was guiding him through the outrageous peace process of identifying, allowing your conscience to start to identify and bring up where misalignment was. And in just a short period of time, I was asking him how he felt. He said, it felt like 1,000 pounds of bricks have been lifted off my shoulders.
Wow.
And all
Yeah.
the darkness that I've been living with in my life seems to have disappeared, and now it's bright. And there's still a lot of issues in his life. I said, well, as you continue to go through this outrageous peace process, I said, you're going to be able to get where nothing is bothering you, that you pinch yourself all the time saying, oh my gosh, life is so blessed, so wonderful. I can't imagine where nothing is coming against you that can ever penetrate you. And I remember he looked at me with these longing eyes and said, and really questioning and hopeful, saying, is that possible?
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, my family and I have been living this way for years. And the coolest thing, Loretta, is he went through the divorce. The wife took literally every single penny, all of his savings and inheritance, and the house, and the kids. I mean, she just ransacked him. And so everything that could go wrong did. But I saw him about a year after that meeting, and he came up and gave me this great big bear hug, and he almost cried, and he said, Batty, thank you. Thank you. He said he was completely at peace, no matter what's coming against him in his life. Internally, all three legs are solid. That stool of his life, rock solid. And he's like Superman, regardless of what the outside part is.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
what outrageous peace really allows you to do. Once you learn how to see the patterns of the things that we do that we think are just, I don't have to forgive that person, or, that
Right.
person made me upset and I don't have to
Right.
let it go. When we start to understand how these patterns affect our spiritual part, and then how that spiritual part then creates problems in our physical and mental, you'll be able to get free and stay free. And that's kind of where we left off at the break.
Yeah. And I was thinking about what you said because there are people who their way of coping with that anger, bitterness, betrayal, whatever you want to call it, is I will just, those people will not be in my life, and I will never let people like that in my life again. And I'm just gonna,
Right.
and no, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work. It's not addressing the issue. In my opinion, it's putting you into a smaller and smaller box to where you're not really living your life and you're not really coping. You're not, you
You know,
know,
you know what's
and you're
simple.
under the influences of these other
Right. We start to
forces. Yeah.
put up barriers to protect us. Right.
Yeah.
And what's actually happening is those barriers are the same thing as when I get a deep cut in my arm, a wound, maybe a dirty knife. What I'd say is that's so bad, I'm not going to allow anything to touch it. So I bandage it, but I never clean it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want anything to touch it because it hurts so much. And unbeknownst to me, when I don't clean it, it starts to get worse and worse. I have to open it up. I'll, disinfect it and allow it to air out, allow it to get the bad stuff out and heal naturally.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is that same thing that we do is what happens with our conscience. So let me see if this makes sense. I want to give you the picture of what's going on.
Okay.
Now this is metaphorically, okay? This isn't literally, but this is the framework that I see things in. So our conscience, sometimes people call it that inner self. I remember I was talking with this man named David, and he was dealing with a lot of anxiety and depression for 26 years, and he kept using the word "my inner self." It's really dark, right? And I led him through this outrageous peace process, and he's actually going, it's gone from an 8 to a 3, it's gone, and he just felt anxiety and depression ease out once he learned how to open it up. So what happens with this inner self, I call it the conscience. When someone does something bad against us and we hold bitterness or unforgiveness or they make us angry, our conscience says, let it go. Let me air it back out and get back in alignment. And we go, no. We put those walls up, and what we do is we squanch our conscience down like a little child. We bully it and abuse it, and it gets scared. Just as we put up barriers to protect ourselves in our life, it's like our conscience puts up barriers to protect itself from us. And so what it does is it now holds on to these things that we need to release. But because we forcefully rejected it, it doesn't remind us to release it anymore because it doesn't want to be abused again. It doesn't want to be punished again. So now we go through life allowing these things, we absorb issues and never let go of them. And now our conscience is just getting out of whack. And over time, we start to find ourselves with things that we keep going to the doctor or the psychiatrist for, we just live with, and we think it's part of life.
Yeah.
And now we have to learn how to tell our conscience it's safe to bring it to the surface so we can start to air it out. So I'd love to kind of talk how to do that. Can we do that?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
that was my question. Yes.
So the simplest way to start to do this, and I want to give you the foundation, okay? I've been doing this for 10 years, and I've done a lot of trial and error, trying to figure out how do you get to that point of allowing your conscience to surface what actually is out of alignment so you can then release it. That's what chapter 8 in my book, Outrageous Peace, is all about. It's that non-religious prayer. And by the way, as you were sharing just before the break, the entire book takes less than an hour to read.
Mm-hmm.
It's 70 pages, and it takes about 30 minutes to get to chapter 8. So this is not heavy duty. You're going to laboriously go through. It's going to go really quick and easy. And but what you start to look for, if you look at the symptoms, I was working with a lady named Kim. She had neuropathy in her legs, in her thighs, for 15 years. And it was on a 0 to 10 level. It was always an 8. It never left. So I started to guide her through this and guiding her to address when did this start and what occurred about the time that it started. And someone came up in her mind that hurt her. So I guided her through the process of how to release unforgiveness. And there are several steps with that. But once she released unforgiveness, by the next day, all of her neuropathy pain that she'd been living with for 15 years had completely gone. Disappeared. The doctor said it's permanent. It's unrecoverable, incurable. And yet it was just a misalignment. So one of the things that is real important is if you were to think back, when did something start? You'll usually find a root of where something opened up. And what we're looking for is where something opened up in the spiritual dimension of my life, where I did something that my conscience said, don't do. Let it go. just forget about it, release it. But we chose to hold on to it. Whatever that thing was, there's typically two concepts, two things that happen in that spiritual side of us. One is we have to release it. And like for forgiveness, it would be something as simple as saying, I forgive so-and-so and I release them and I will no longer hold on to them in my heart because I want to be freed of whatever that holding on has been doing in my life. And the other thing that happens, and this is a very interesting thing, Loretta, especially in your line of work. You may be aware of this, you may not be. But any time something goes on between two people, there can also be a doorway that is I'll call it a negative spiritual connection between those two people. Okay? If you think about we are a soul and a body, something in our souls kind of like connect. I don't understand how it works. I just understand that there is that connection. Because I've seen people like one person, she'd been a smoker for 30 years, I think, tried everything to quit smoking. She was smoking 3 packs a day. She tried to release smoking. She tried to go through all the addiction recovery stuff, the 12-step program for smoking, whatever it was. Nothing worked. And then, as she started to understand the outrageous peace process, she realized maybe there was a negative spiritual connection with the person who taught her to smoke at 10 years old. So she was able to then release that connection, break it, and then get that entity that was amplifying smoking in her life, it left. And she was able to completely and fully quit smoking without any repercussions. None of this, just by your strong will. It was simply releasing that thing that happened in her life many years back that kept it going. That's the coolest part. So you want to go back to when did it begin? And you want to give your conscience the freedom to start to assess it. Is this making sense?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, totally. I was thinking when you were talking, because there's a couple of other ways that shows up, and then I want you to continue. Um, I have people that come to me that are trying to get out of a relationship or they're out of a relationship, but then they're like, why can't I stop thinking about him?
Yes.
Like I'm just,
Oh,
there's
yes.
that,
That's a
there's that.
big one.
Yeah, that's a big one. Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah,
so at the Addiction Recovery Center,
yeah,
they have had a lot of sexual partners, by and
yes,
large. If they were to, these ladies are usually in their mid-20s, and it would take 2 pages to write down every sexual partner they've had, because that's the lifestyle there. But
yeah,
what happens is, back to the ancient Bible text, it says that whenever you have a sexual encounter with someone, you're actually joined in the spiritual realm. There's a connection there, that negative connection. And I'll have them raise their hands and say, how many of you feel like you're still controlled by one of your sexual partners that you're no longer even dealing with? And
yeah,
every hand
yeah,
raises up.
yeah,
It feel like they're still controlling me. They're still a part of my life. I can't get them out. What's happened is, now this is the metaphor, this is the framework. So just picture this as a process, not as the truth, okay? When you've had that relationship, then especially if it's a controlling relationship with them, something that's driving them to control you, when you engage sexually with them, there's a connection in that spiritual realm that allows that same controlling entity to now kind of
mm-hmm.
inhabit you. It's the
Yeah,
same way if I've got a virus going on and you get close to me, you're going to catch my virus. And now you're going to become like I am.
yeah,
And
yeah,
you're going to be sneezing and runny nose and all this stuff. But spiritually, that's how it works, okay? So you have to be able to learn how to break that connection and identify that entity that came in through that connection. And once you let it go, then it all stops. And that's one of the fun things with these ladies at the Addiction Recovery Centers is as they go through this process, all of that controlling feeling
yeah.
completely leaves out of their
Oh
lives.
yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah. Okay, listen, ladies, just get it now. Outrageous Piece, just chapter 8.
Yeah. Go to outrageouspeace.com. So that's where you'll find the book, outrageouspeace.com, and also some other free stuff as well that you can learn more about it.
Yeah, so you were talking about this process. We're in chapter 8, right?
Yeah.
And so we identify where did this begin?
So
And then,
right.
yeah.
So it has a beginning, and once you learn the process, and this is what chapter 8 teaches you is how to talk to your inner being, that conscience, so to speak, to bring, so it will start to identify these things for you. Have you ever had something in your life, Loretta, where you're working through this problem, you couldn't figure it out,
Right.
something's going on, so you just put it aside, you go through life, and then you're taking a shower a week later, and all of a sudden, the full solution hits you, right?
Yep.
And now
Yep.
you know exactly how to solve the problem. You ever had that happen?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
All the time.
That's your subconscious. When you give it the assignment, your subconscious works on it without you thinking about it. In the same way, what chapter 8 does, this non-religious meditative prayer process, it starts to allow your conscience the permission to start searching its archives to find out, where did this begin? All these little things that you got going on, these issues that are frustrating your life, where did each one begin? And then it starts to surface it automatically without any effort. And once it surfaces, chapter 8 teaches you how to release it. And so it just kind of, it's an organic thing that happens. And over the next several days, these things start to pop in your mind. You release it, and all of a sudden, your life starts to come back to peace.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
restores the peace that's been blocked.
Can you give us, I realize we don't really have enough time to dive into this, like it would be lovely. But can you give us a little idea or a little taste of the prayer? And you
Yes,
also wrote another book that, I at least want to mention it, either the Prayer of Freedom, which I think you do this book first and then the other book, or it
correct.
doesn't really matter.
Right.
But could you, in like 1 minute or so, give
Yes.
us a taste of that?
So a
Thank you.
taste of it, almost everyone has someone that's hurt them. And that hurt has then ended up with unforgiveness. And unbeknownst to you, usually anything that you have that's chronic, that's always degrading your quality of life, is going to be tied to that. So here's the easiest way to do it. All you have to do is picture the person in your mind who hurt you the most, and then speak out loud, I forgive blank for what they did. I release them from my heart, and I release all judgments I have against them. Okay? You don't have to call them up. It's what you're doing is you're speaking out loud, I release this. And then ask God, and now God or higher power, whatever your terminology may be, I ask that you remove anything from me that is tied to that unforgiveness. And then just start to notice what happens. Either over the next couple of hours or by the next morning, you'll feel shift almost all the time. Back pain is gone, sciatica starts to lessen, migraines stop, allergies disappear. You'll see things like that happen. And that gives you just a taste of the concept behind how all of this works.
You know, I know this works, right? I know it works, and I know people are like, "How does that work?" Right? I'm not sure there's an answer to that.
I don't
What do you
know.
say, Beatty?
Right. It's like, how does my cell phone work? Because I can see pictures, watch movies, and talk to people across the world. I don't know. I just know that it does. And don't worry about the mechanics of how. Just understand that when you go through this process, the outcome occurs. And that's a mystery that sometimes we just have to keep living with.
Yeah. And I want to say also, the book is great. It's easy read. It gets you to where you need to be. Chapter 8, you have the prayers in there, and and it's a longer prayer in here. But if you just, I'm gonna just kind of invite people to try it. You
Yeah.
got nothing to lose and everything to win. And if you just say the prayers and say them out loud, what is the importance of out loud, Beatty?
Out loud makes it real. Like
Yeah.
sometimes we're trying to think through a problem, but once we start to verbalize the problem and talk through it, it becomes clear.
Yeah. So we're at the end of our show. That felt like 3 minutes. That was wonderful. Final words to the audience, and once again, where they can find you.
Yeah, final words. If you're dealing with anything that just won't leave, you feel heaviness on your, like you're carrying around a heavy backpack, there's darkness in your life, there's a constant level of tension, frustration, pain, then it could be something in that spiritual realm. I find 90% of the time it usually is. The best place to go to learn about outrageous peace and start to get free is outrageouspeace.com. And that's the best starting point. If you have heavy, heavy things, the Prayer of Freedom is the deeper workbook, but outrageouspeace.com is a great entry level.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Beatty. Thanks for being on my show. Thanks for walking through the fire with
Yes, thank you,
your
Loretta.
thank you for being here. And everybody have a great week. Drink a lot of water, take care of yourself. There's fire out there. And Betty Mathers, you are the best. Thank you so much.